What if the very tools that are meant to help you create content are the very thing that is blocking you from actually creating it? Kind of let that sit there for just a moment. Because what looks like a content problem is actually a trust problem. And there isn't a template out there that can fix that. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Visibility Unlocked. Today, I want to talk about a completely new perspective on our content creation, because this is where we see a lot of visibility opportunity. And most of us are sitting here saying that it doesn't work. Now, last week, we talked about the difference between a strategy and an approach. And a strategy at the end of the day is the where you are showing up. The approach is how you are showing up. Now, the strategy when it comes to content planning really hones down mostly into social media content. Maybe it's for a blog, maybe it's for a podcast or your YouTube channel, but the majority of my clients hone in on the idea that social media doesn't work for them, that this strategy isn't working. And the evidence for them comes down to when they go to create content. They feel overwhelmed, they blank out, they feel like they're forcing it. And at the end of the day, what they have been trying isn't working. So here's what they end up doing. They start following social media gurus and managers that are telling us exactly what works best on Instagram or social media right now. They are following along templates that are fill in the blank, where they just put in their expertise and their knowledge. They are downloading free calendars from Pinterest that literally says on Monday, post behind the scenes, on Tuesday, post a testimonial, on Wednesday, post a reel that gives a reframe or your perspective. So they get all of these different tools that are supposed to be helping them create content. But at the end of the day, they still don't know what to post. They are literally asking the question, what do I post? Even with these guides that are showing them post a point of view, post a testimonial, their minds still go blank, or they start to force it. And then they post what they forced to create, and it flops. And then they start to doubt themselves, but we're not really ready to admit that we are the problem. So we blame the actual tool. We say, well, this calendar doesn't work for me, or this framework doesn't work, or even though the template that I see working for other people is working for them, it doesn't work for me. So they move on to the next tool, and then they go through this whole thing all over again. It is literally a loop of being stuck in a content creation plan. But what we don't understand is that the actual tools that we are trying to use to help get us out of this loop are the very thing that is creating the power of the loop to continue to go. The question then becomes, what if the tool isn't the solution? What if it's actually making things worse? So let me share with you how this all kind of unfolded for me. Back when I transitioned from being an Indian wedding photographer to a personal brand photographer, somebody who was going to specialize in helping entrepreneurs market themselves, create more visibility so that they could grow their business, I had no experience in marketing. Because in the Indian wedding world, everything was by word of mouth. That was the way that you market. You just produced a particular result and you got more clients from that. I knew I had a lot to learn. So I hired mentors. I downloaded every free PDF that I could get my hands on in order to understand what marketing online was like in 2019. As I started to see all of these different approaches to the strategies, I began to realize that, man, there are endless options. So I need to figure out what feels good for me and what actually helps me stay consistent. So I created my own calendars, and that worked for a little while. But at the end of the day, it still felt like I had to stick to a certain schedule. And again, it felt forced most of the time. So then I started working with a social media manager. And don't get me wrong, she was amazing. Being on these calls for like 2 hours once a month, brainstorming ideas of all the things, she was literally pulling my genius out of me. And then we were creating a calendar of things that I needed to execute so that the next month when we met, we could build off of what I had done the month before. And there was some momentum with that for a while, but it wasn't really sustainable because at the end of the day, it was me being put on a schedule. If I didn't post what we had planned for me to post the previous month, then we weren't really ready to move on. And so it was kind of a waste of both of our time and money to get on a call the next month. But hey, I was contracted in, I made an agreement with her. So at the end of the day, while that was inspiring because we were able to brainstorm all of these ideas together, it wasn't sustainable for me to create consistent visibility inside of my business. So I broke away from that for a while and kind of broke away from even just creating content. And I would just have these moments of inspiration and I would make a post. And sometimes it took off, other times it didn't. And I couldn't understand the difference between the two. So I decided that because I was having this up and down experience, that I needed a little bit more guidance. So I bought into an actual membership where they give you weekly content ideas. Now, this was like the full shebang. They gave you examples of reels that were going viral at the time. They were giving you trending music links directly to it, so you didn't have to search for your own. They also were giving you literally fill in the blank templates so that things were phrased a certain way according to what was working on the social media platform at the time. At first, this made the whole process feel really easy. But at the end of the day, I was running into the same problem that I had with all these other tools, where things started to feel forced because I was trying to fit my zone of genius into somebody else's template, and that I needed to be on a schedule. They were literally posting every single week, giving us new content to create. And so it was one of those things where if I went a week or even just several days without posting, I started to feel behind. And that put a lot of pressure on me to keep up, to go and create content, to manufacture something just for the sake of creating content. At the end of the day, each one of these tools led me back to these same exact symptoms: feeling overwhelmed, feeling pressured, feeling confused, feeling defeated, even because I felt like I couldn't keep up. I literally was starting to internally doubt myself, even though I wasn't ready to admit that on the outside yet. So I decided to just completely step away from all of the tools. I canceled all of the memberships, saved me a ton of money. And I decided that I was going to take a break from social media. And I did. And I took a really long break. I gave myself freedom. There was no schedule. There was no agenda. I was only going to post when I actually felt inspired to do so. And once I removed all this pressure that these tools were putting upon me, something magical really happened. I got inspired to post a reel on Instagram that was talking about your brand photos and the energy. I literally took a small clip of behind the scenes from a recent photo shoot with one of my most favorite clients I've ever worked with. And I had just one little saying as text on the reel. And it says, the reason you don't love your brand photos isn't because they aren't on brand. It's because of the energy you were in when you executed your photo shoot. That was it. It was just an awareness for people, a get to pause and think about this from a different perspective. And this literally just came out of nowhere for me. It was inspiration, me just working with my clients, working in my business day to day, that this just came up for me, that this was something that I wanted to share. And you guys, it took off for me anyway. I had about 3,000 views on it, which after only getting just a several hundred, it felt like a tremendous win. And I had 77 interactions, total of 67 likes, 5 comments, 5 saves, all the things that we're looking for when we create content to let us know that it was landing with our audience. Now, the best thing about this for me is when it came down to the views, 60% of the views came from non-followers, which meant that I was reaching new people. So after seeing all of these statistics, I said to myself, okay, this is it. You hit nail on the head. Okay, you know exactly what to do and what to talk about. So I literally started to replicate it. Same topic, just find a different way of talking about it. But when I tried to do that, it didn't really just come natural to me the way that it did originally. So it put me back into that forced execution. And when I posted those pieces of content, they flopped, they died, they went nowhere. There was no reach, there was no interaction. So what do? I started to doubt the topic. But the reality was, it was absolutely nothing about the topic. The original piece of content worked because of how it came about. It's because of how I felt when I said it. And that feeling, that energetic signature, that frequency, that's not something that is replicatable on a schedule, which is what a lot of these content tools do. Whether it's an actual calendar or we're just following along on a content plan with our content pillars, at the end of the day, it is putting us into a box. So let's talk about what's really happening underneath all of this, because this isn't really a content approach problem or even a content strategy problem. Underlying it all, it is a personal power problem. Because you see the calendar, the template, the post this on Monday framework, say it in this way template, all send us the same message, that you don't already know what to say or what to do. This leads us into the belief of, I don't know what to post, which leads us to asking the question, what should I post today? You hear that? What should I post today? Again, this is forced. This isn't natural. This is us literally thinking that we have to sit down and produce something from nothing, even if we are using a template or a calendar or a topic that is showing us what to start talking about. We're still starting from scratch because we are trying to force something to come to the surface. All of this leads to overthinking, burnout, our content landing flat. Okay, nothing is resonating, and we start doubting our own worth and our knowledge and our experience. But this is what happens when we start handing our knowing over to an external tool like a template. So here's what I want you to remember. The majority of the population is not designed to initiate. In fact, only 9% of the population are manifestors, and their strategy is to initiate. That means 91% of us are not designed to sit down, manufacture, schedule, and execute something. But all of the tools, all of the approaches that are being pushed out there as strategies are asking us all to do the same thing, to sit down, to manufacture, to schedule, and to execute something. But the reality is that resonant content doesn't come from initiating for 91% of us. For 70% of us, it comes from responding to our life, to our clients, to our conversations, to what is going on right now, what is happening around us. And I am living proof of that. That reel that took off happened because I was putting away all the tools. I removed all the pressure of having to sit down and manufacture something. And I just let it naturally come up. It was inspiration from me doing whatever I was doing. I couldn't even tell you, this post was a while ago. So I couldn't even tell you like what I was working on that particular day. But whatever I was working on, that is what inspired this reel that took off. It landed, it resonated with people. Another time this happened was honestly just recent, like this week. So Mondays are the day that I sit down and I plan out my content. I've kind of put myself back on that schedule. Now, after being gone for a couple of weeks, I have gotten out of my rhythm a little bit. Coming back to it, I started to fall into old patterns that weren't serving me. In that, hey, today is Monday, and today is the day that I plan out my content. So I pulled up my Trello board where I have all of my content ideas that when I get inspired of what I can create content about, I go and I brain dump them there. And I pulled it up. And this week, episode number 34 was blank. It was completely blank. And I froze. I was like, okay, what am I going to create content about this week? What am I going to talk about? I looked at the previous couple of weeks of content and what I was talking about, looking for inspiration, and y'all, it just was not coming to me. Meanwhile, I kept getting distracted. I kept getting pulled into other tasks within my business, client work, other things that needed to get done. And I was literally catching myself and saying, wait, no, you can't work on this right now. This is not what today is about. Today is about creating content. And if you don't come up with something to talk about, then you're not going to have anything to execute this week. I was putting this pressure on myself. And what does that do as an open root center? It makes me freeze. I can't come up with anything, like absolutely nothing. I do not work well under pressure, whether it's pressure I'm putting on myself or it's pressure from an external source. And I kept falling back into this own trap. Me, somebody who specializes in this. And this is part of the game of alignment. And I'm going to try not to go off onto a tangent here, but we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall in and out of our own alignment of how we are designed to operate in this world. The whole name of the game is catching ourselves when we do. And I had to catch myself on Monday and realize that I was putting way too much pressure on myself by trying to follow this schedule, this calendar that I had even created for myself. And that if I just only tried to focus on this one task, that nothing was going to happen. Or I was going to force something into happening and it wasn't going to land with my audience. So what did I do? I once again surrendered. I gave myself the freedom to break away from the content calendar, from the schedule, and say, you know what? If I end up not posting this week, I don't post this week. It's going to be better for me to take a week off of posting than it is for me to force content, burn energy on it, become frustrated by it, feel exhausted just to have it not land with my audience. So I followed my energy where it was pulling me into all of these other tasks that were not on the calendar for that day, which was getting prepared for a client reading. And as I started to prepare for Tuesday's client's reading, that's when it hit me that I had fallen back into this pattern again. And if I was falling into this pattern again, well, that meant that probably a lot of other people were falling into this pattern too, but just don't have the awareness of it. And lo and behold, this episode was birthed from inspiration, from me leaning into my generator strategy of responding to life, for giving myself the permission to go off script, to go off schedule, and to just live life. Because that is where the content lives, is in you living your life. But we are told that we have to share, we have to educate, we have to entertain, we have to do all of these things. And then once we feel this pressure of having to do all of these things, we start to get in our head that we don't know how to do it. But of course we do. You are an expert. You have deep knowledge in your niche, in your specific topic, of your industry, of what you do and how you serve your clients. You already have all of the knowledge. The reason why you believe you don't know what to post or how to post is because you have all of this external factors coming in and telling you that it has to be done a certain way. That's taking your power away from you. You don't need to be told what to post. Instead, we need to learn how to trust what's already moving through us. This is a complete recalibration of how we approach creating content. And that takes teaching our nervous system to recognize our own signals, to have this awareness of what we need to see and be present and feel so that we can catch ourselves and we can shift back into the way we are designed to operate. And this is what I love about human design, is it shows you exactly how to recognize your own signal and what to do to come back to trusting what is already moving through you. It shows you how exactly you are designed to lead, to show up, and to be seen. And a lot of times it doesn't fit what's working on social media right now. And if you're just listening to this, I'm putting all of that in air quotation marks. So I want to leave you with this. One, if you're experiencing all of this, if any of this resonated with you right now, and you are sitting here telling yourself that you don't know what to post on social media or social media doesn't work for you, I want to let you know that the strategy is not the problem. It's your approach. And underneath all of that is the trust factor. You not trusting to follow your own approach. You giving away your personal power to all of the gurus, all of the marketing experts, to other people in your industry even that have nailed it. They have figured out the formula. And so you're trying to copy what they're doing. How many times have you gone into the search feature of social media, typed in something in your industry to see what other people in your industry are posting and have tried to replicate that? It's really no different than getting your content direction from an expert. So I want you to pause for a moment and I want you to think about the last piece of content that felt really easy and natural for you to create. What were you doing? What were you responding to? What conversations were happening? What inspired you to create the content that you created? What were you feeling inside of your body? That is your signal. And that is where your content lives. And if you're not feeling that signal, go out and live life. And be present enough so that you can notice that signal, that inspirational feeling that hits you. And then whatever it is, write it down. Make a voice note. Doesn't mean you have to stop and create the piece of content right then and there. Just write down the idea, the concept. You can always come back to it later. And I can promise if you do this over and over and over again, or if you take it a step further and invest in a human design reading with me, then I can show you exactly what that looks like for you and how to implement it into your life. Because when you're really in it, when you start integrating this on a day-to-day basis, you know what happens? You stop asking, what do I post today altogether? Because it's never a question that needs answered anymore. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes to learn more about a human design reading with me, what's included, what to expect, and where you can actually book one. Until then, let's lead our visibility from the inside out. Most conversations about being seen stop at how you market yourself. Here at Visibility Unlocked, we crack open the 3 layers of visibility: market, client, and inner presence. Because without all 3, you're in the wrong visibility, and wrong visibility is just as bad as none. If you've been putting a lot of effort into showing up and still aren't seeing the results you desire, then you know it's time for a different approach. So hit subscribe, because that's exactly what the show is here to give you. And if you're finding value here, please leave a review so others can find their way to their right visibility too. Please note that the information shared in this podcast is not intended as legal, health, or financial advice and is for entertainment purposes only. If you are looking for professional advice in any of these areas, please seek out a local professional. Thank you for being here, and until next time, lead your visibility from the inside out.